Today I'm going to share one of the comfort foods that I grew up eating here in the mountains of Appalachia. It's a very simple dish. It was just white rice, but instead of just eating it with maybe, a piece of meat, some kind of chicken, something like that, we would put sugar and butter in it and eat it almost like a cereal. So when I began to think about doing this little quick video, I thought, well, I wonder, if that's common in other places too. So of course I did a few searches, I did a little bit of research, and what I found was it is common in other areas. I've seen a lot of comments from people who live in Texas, a lot of people in the Midwest. So it was very common for them, just as it was for us, to eat rice with sugar and butter. And eat it as either a kind of a dessert, but more like kind of a snack or kind of a comfort when you were feeling bad. Also very commonly eaten for breakfast instead of maybe oatmeal or grits. And when you think about cooking rice, there's just a variety of ways to do it. And everybody has their own little tricks. I love to cook mine on top of the stove, just like kind of like it tells you on the back of the bag of rice that you buy. I add a little bit more water because that seems to work better for me. Corey, this morning, she was over helping me, so she actually made the rice I'm going to use today. She made it in the Instapot and showed me how easy that is to make. Just as there's all those different ways, kind of tips and tricks of people that cook rice. Of course, you can buy rice steamers. I know some people do it in a crock pot. Some people do it really fast. Some people do it really slow. Everybody kind of has their own version, and that's as it should be. We should all find what works best for us. But also, when it comes to eating rice as a sweetened kind of cereal or snack, people have the difference in that too. We simply put sugar and butter, and that was it. That was all. A lot of people will add kind of making a quick rice pudding, if you've ever had rice pudding. So they'll go ahead and add some raisins, maybe some cinnamon, maybe some cream or half and half or milk. So there's lots of various ways to do that as well. I looked through all my Appalachian cookbooks this morning because I was just curious, like how far spread is this? I know it wasn't just my family growing up here in southern Appalachia that ate rice with sugar and butter. And one of the reasons I know that is because Matt, my husband, he grew up a whole 4 counties away, still in the same general area, but not in my immediate family. We didn't know each other till we were grown. And he grew up eating it the same way, eating rice with sugar and butter as kind of a snack or just like for breakfast. Or Matt will even still eat his like that if we are having meat. He will do that on the same plate. He will put his rice and then he will put sugar and butter in it and stir it up and eat it along with his savory items. But when I looked in all those cookbooks, I didn't really find anything. I found rice pudding a lot, but that really is not what I was talking about. I did find in More Than Moonshine, Appalachian's Recipes and Recollections by Sydney Saylor Farr. This is my favorite cookbook about Appalachia, because she's all through the book. She gives wonderful recipes, but also gives a lot of information about the area and about her life growing up. And she was from the Berea area of Kentucky. Her husband, the Farr in the name, was actually from Western North Carolina, so where I live. So a lot of the recipes she will say come from his family. So they come from Western North Carolina, where I live. But this was the only cookbook that really mentioned eating rice the way that I grew up eating it, and even she put a different little spin on it. But I'm going to read to you what she says. This is in her chapter, Cooked Grain Cereal. The most common foods to be found on the breakfast tables in the mountains were eggs, bacon, side meat, or ham, hot biscuits, cream gravy, jelly, and preserves. Sometimes there would be a side dish of oatmeal or boiled sweetened rice. We never ate dry cereals for breakfast or sat down to only a dish of oatmeal and toast. In 1960, my first husband and I moved to Indianapolis so he could get a better paying job. That was the first time I had ever lived away from the mountains, and it was scary, exciting, and exhausting. For the first time, I had a job away from home and came home at night an hour after Leon and our son, Wayne, got home. The lifestyle was so different. It was hard to acquire the confidence necessary to cross busy streets, ride city buses, shop in supermarkets, which covered an area as large as my vegetable garden back home, and do business with large city banks. I decided we would live like city people. The first morning I served a bowl of dry cereal and toast for breakfast. Leon demanded how I thought a man could live on a breakfast like that. He worked hard in the paper mill and needed a hearty breakfast to last until lunchtime. I fixed him a couple of eggs, but insisted there was no time to bake biscuits because I had to be at work by 8 o'clock. Gradually, we learned to adjust, but never completely. We were homesick for the hills and went home every weekend we could manage it. My mother cooked oatmeal rice and cornmeal mush for us sometimes. The list of breakfast foods is not long because there was not much variety in the foods we ate. Eggs, churned butter, cream gravy, and hot biscuits or cornbread were as certain to be on the table as the sun was certain to rise on a clear day. If any variety existed, it was in the serving of fruit, jams, and jellies, or oatmeal rice and cooked cereals. So she goes on to give different recipes, of course, for the cornmeal mush. I have a video about that you can check out. Fried cornmeal mush, cream of wheat, oatmeal, and then boiled rice. Her boiled rice recipe is very interesting to me because like I said earlier, I add more water than the recipe calls for because I just think it works out better. Well, she adds a whole lot more water. So she uses 1 cup of rice, 2 quarts of boiling water, and 2 teaspoons of salt. Wash rice in hot water, drain, add rice gradually to rapidly boiling salted water, reduce heat so rice will boil gently, cook uncovered until grains are tender about 25 minutes, drain at once in a colander or sieve and pour hot water through rice to remove excess starch. Cover with cloth and set over hot water to keep warm or place in warm oven to plump rice and grains. Makes 4 generous servings. So I think that's very interesting. I might try her method next time and see. I have over the years, especially certain kinds of rice, like jasmine and some of the others, they will advise you to rinse till clear under running water to get like that excess starch off. But I may try that. So, and then she does have like a rice and pineapple casserole and shares that we always preferred boiled rice to be sweetened and cooked with raisins and chunks of pineapple is how her mother would do it. Served this way, rice could be dessert instead of a side dish or breakfast cereal. I think she might be talking that more about in her lifetime instead of when she was a girl. But either way, this was the really only mention of eating sweetened rice that I could find in my Appalachian cookbooks, even though I certainly grew up doing that. So of course I have to try me some. Corey's got. And another thing this works really well for is that if you, like I made this rice this morning and we will definitely eat it. We love rice. Even my chickens love rice. But if you had leftover rice, of course, you know, a lot of people make fried rice with leftover rice, but you could also just warm it up the next morning and have it for breakfast. So I think a lot of people do that. Now I have me some half and half. I thought I might try that because I read so many things of people, and I'm just sprinkling a little sugar, of so many people adding milk or half and half or whatever to their rice when they ate it, but I never did that growing up. But I thought maybe I would try it this morning and see. So, and if the rice is warm like this is, it doesn't take but just a minute to get the butter to melt. I'm going to let it melt before I put it in. Okay, now I'm just going to add just a little bit of half and half. I've never tried it like this, so this will be new for me. I guess you would just add as much as you wanted. And it'd probably be better if that was warm, because I didn't warm it up. It's good. I kind of like it with the extra moisture. Very good. As I said, so many people that I was reading, when I was reading this morning as I was researching, a lot of people put cinnamon and raisins, but I'm just partial to the way that I grew up eating it. And I really don't remember ever having rice at home that I didn't put sugar and butter in it. But the first time, and I don't eat it like this all the time now, like I said, Matt does, but I rarely do. Every once in a while I'll think when I just want something kind of satisfying and we've got leftover rice, that's when I would most likely eat it like this. But when I first went to school, Martins Creek School here, where I live, and I would eat lunch in the lunchroom, you know, in the cafeteria, and they would serve rice. And of course there was no sugar. They wasn't giving the kids free reign with the sugar. So I began to eat rice and they had salt shakers and pepper shakers, and I would put salt on my rice and I would eat it like that. I probably didn't eat anything else on the plate, but I found that I liked the rice. I was a picky eater. But that's when I started eating, thinking, well, rice is really good. It's good with sugar and butter, but it's also really good without it. So from then on, that's kind of how, especially for, like I was saying with Matt, would put sugar and butter with his on a savory plate, like for supper. I wouldn't do that. I just put salt on mine and eat the rice like that. So I'll be interested to know if you grew up with eating rice, white rice with sugar and butter, or if you know anyone that does, or if that was kind of one of your comfort foods like it was for me, especially if I was feeling bad or something like that. This just kind of really hits the spot. And it is a very economical meal if you think about it for breakfast. Now, not if you're buying one of those really fancy rices, which are good. I love them. But if you just buy plain white rice, you can still get it pretty affordable. So, today we're all worrying more about the cost of how much things cost. So it does make a pretty quick, especially if you do it the day before and just warm it up, a quick, hearty, and frugal breakfast. So please leave me a comment with any thoughts you have about eating white rice with sugar and butter. And as always, I hope you'll drop back by often to help me celebrate Appalachia, which is a whole lot of foodways, just like this comforting dish that I grew up eating here in the southern Appalachian mountains.